And we will begin. And there we are. So good morning and welcome to the Healing Conversation, you guys. This is really a serendipitous event because, as some of you know, I was going to be in our space today hosting an all-day event, an all-day healing conversation. And I know that when I canceled the face-to-face meeting earlier in the week, I got a few pushbacks from people like, are you sure it was going to be a small group? And why are you worried? But as the week progressed, right, could you feel the momentum? Everybody was starting to really notice that this is more than just be careful. This is like, make a statement about how you want to show up right now. And so I was hesitant to make that statement early in the week, but I'm not at all disappointed that I did it. I'm glad I did it when I did it. So we're going to have a few people dropping in. I'm sure there's a lot of people that indicated interest, so we'll just let that happen. And I'm going to move us directly over to our slide presentation so that we can focus in on the pretty stuff here. So the Healing Conversation is a body of work that began to come through when I was a child. I think I began having this conversation with myself early on, asking the questions about just about the whole human story. Why were people so mean to each other? I just remember as a child having that sense that people weren't behaving well. And I'm feeling very stubborn about that. I know that a lot of people have that same sort of deep core of sort of social justice. And I grew up in the time when Martin Luther King was assassinated and John F. Kennedy was assassinated. And these were icons of hope for the human story. And my mother felt deeply, and I think I took on her deep core of social justice as well. And so I think I've been asking this question since I was a child, like, how do we heal this? How do we show up in a way that everybody gets to be happy, you know, in a very simplistic, naive, I'm going to mute everyone so that we don't get any background noise. There we go. So how do we show up in a way that is consistent with what I believe is true about the human story, and that is that we are beings of love. And so over the years, these questions kept coming up in my heart. And a year ago today, in fact, about 15 minutes from now, I was recovering from a little minor surgery on my heel. I had a bone spur removed and a little bit of, the doctor called it exciting the wound, scraping the Achilles tendon to clean off some scar tissue that it had developed from the bone spur. And I was 2.5 weeks into recovery. And there I was, sitting in my chair, deciding it's a good time to get up and go do something. And in the process of getting up, I fell down. Okay, we're going to have everybody muted. There we go. So I got up and I fell down and I ruptured my Achilles tendon. And the doctor actually used the word obliterated it. And I was given a choice to have a very detailed, complex surgery, which would remove my tendon from my big toe, insert it into the heel, wrap it in cadaver skin, and all of that was sounding upsetting to me. And then he said, and if you have any autoimmune, which I do, you would have potential for infection. And my whole body said no. And it was the first time in my adult life I had said no to Western medicine. And I said, what happens if I don't have this surgery? And he was very blunt. He says, well, I think you'll be left with, you know, an unsatisfactory outcome. You'll have a drop foot, and stairs and distance will be a problem for you. And I said, but if I just wait 6 months, remember I just come out of surgery 2 weeks before. If I wait 6 months, is there any harm in that? And he said, no harm. And I said, okay, so I'm going to wait. So that was a year ago, 20 minutes from now, right? So something profound happened that day when I fell and felt the pain and heard the pop, the classic pop. I went into sort of an out-of-body experience, and I sat there on the floor for about 30 minutes trying to get composed. There was no one home. I was by myself. I live way out in the middle of nowhere, so it's not like I could call a neighbor. I couldn't even get to the phone initially. But I realized after a few minutes I wasn't really in pain. I was more in shock. And so I took the time to just breathe and compose myself and sort of mentally compute how I was going to get off the floor to the phone, to my chair. Do I call 911? Do I need to call? I just knew that it wasn't going to be life-threatening, but that I'd need to deal with this. And so in that time of sitting quietly, I felt Spirit come to me very strongly and say, you need to sit still, really, really still. And this was a continuing theme of what I'd heard previous times earlier in the year before, and I just wasn't sitting still. I had never allowed my nervous system the chance to reset. I'd been doing a lot of trauma release work in my own story, and I was not giving my body the time it needed to reset back to sort of that leveling point of my central nervous system. And so it was a year ago that the universe served it up on a platter for me. So there I sat with my ruptured Achilles, and the doctor said, you have to go home and sit really still if you're not going to do this surgery. And as he's saying that, my heart's resonating. Okay, I get it. I'm supposed to sit really, really still. So I did. And as I sat still, I began to see after a month, they did an x-ray, the threads of my Achilles started to reach up to the threads of the Achilles that were on the top of my heel to the top of the bottom of my calf. So all that to say, I was healing and sitting still was working. So I continued to do that. And about another 2 weeks after that, so 6 weeks into this recovery, I get this download. And some of you have seen it up on the Healing Conversation YouTube page. There's a day where I just get this real clear sense that I need to record it, I need to video it, and it's about the download for the Be Love Top of the Hour Breath app. So that came through, and I began to realize, oh, I'm supposed to sit still, not just for my Achilles, but there's a lot that wants to come through. And for about 3 or 4 years before that, I'd been getting these downloads and recording them all. And that's if we were together for 8 hours, I could take you through some of that detail. But this very specific prompt was, you need to record these because they're important. And what became clear, and I went back and listened to some of the ones from about 4 years ago, it kept saying, we are going into a time of great reset. And we're going to have to work with each other in that laboring process. We're going to have to breathe with each other. And I kept asking, is it a war? Is it the election? What is the grief? And the grief was, it's a natural event. It will come through nature. And of course, when we had the big fires last year all over South America and Africa and Siberia, I thought, okay, well, it's the fires. Well, the fires were part of it, because what it did in that moment when we had those, the Amazon was on fire, we could feel sort of that visceral connection to the loss of oxygen, right? The breath was impacted by just the imagination of what would happen if the whole world was on fire. Like we saw the horrific fires, and having been through 2 major fires where I live, I could instantly, viscerally relate to what was happening in those big fires in the Amazon. And of course, Australia's been through their version of this. We've all had it, but that wasn't it. It wasn't global enough, but it was a taste of what global panic feels like, right? And so when this began to open up and happen, what's happening right now with the corona, I began to really recognize that signature of what I saw and felt was coming. And I'm not alone. There are a lot of people have felt and seen what's coming. And so I modified my slide deck a little bit today to accommodate what is in the field with us right now. And this came through just this morning. And so I threw it in here, and I want to read it out loud because I think it's such a profound capture of how I see this pattern interrupting moment that we are here to experience collectively. Dear humans, this is from the desk of the coronavirus. Stop, just stop. It's no longer a request, it's a mandate. We will help you. We will bring the supersonic high-speed merry-go-round to a halt. We will stop the planes, the trains, the schools, the malls, the meetings, the frenetic, furried rush of illusions and obligations that keep you from hearing our single and shared beating heart. The way we breathe together in unison, our obligation is to each other, as it has always been, even though you have forgotten. We will interrupt this broadcast, this endless, cacophonous broadcast of divisions and distractions to bring you this long breaking news. We are not well. None of us, all of us are suffering. Last year, the firestorms that scorched the lungs of the earth did not give you pause, nor the typhoons in Africa, China, or Japan, nor the fevered climates in Japan and India. You have not been listening. It is hard to listen when you're so busy all the time, hustling to uphold the comforts and conveniences that scaffold your lives. But the foundation is giving way, buckling under the weight of your needs and desires. We will help you. We will bring the firestorms to your body. We will bring the fever to your body. We will bring the burning, searing, and flooding to your lungs, that you might hear, we are not well. Despite what you might think or feel, we are not the enemy. We are the messenger. We are ally. We are a balancing force. We are asking you to stop and be still, to listen, to move beyond your individual concerns and consider the concerns of all, to be with your ignorance, to find your humility, to relinquish your thinking minds, and to travel deep in the mind of the heart, to look up into the sky streaked with fewer planes and see it, to notice its condition, clear, smoke, smoggy, rainy. How much do you need it to be healthy so that it may also be healthy, that you may also be healthy? To look at a tree, to see it, to notice its condition. How does its health contribute to the health of the sky, to the air you need to be healthy? To visit a river and see it, to notice its condition, clear, clean, murky, polluted. How much do you need to be healthy, need it to be healthy so that you may also be healthy? How does its health contribute to the health of the tree, who contributes to the health of the sky, so that you may also be healthy? Many are afraid now. Do not demonize your fear, and also do not let it rule you. Instead, let it speak to you in your stillness. Listen for its wisdom. What might it be telling you about what is at work, at issue, at risk, beyond the threats of personal inconvenience and illness? As the health of the tree, a river, the sky tells you about the quality of your own health, what might the quality of your health tell you about the health of the rivers, the trees, the sky, and all of us who share this planet with you? Stop. Notice if you're resisting. Notice what you are resisting. Ask why. Stop. Just stop. Be still. Listen. Ask us what we might teach you about illness and healing, about what might be required so that we might all be well. We will help you if you will listen. We will help you if you will listen. That piece of it touched me so deeply, that we just haven't been listening. And so I really, over the last several years, have been listening much, much more closely, and as of the last year, much more acutely. And when I hear words, they capture my imagination. And so I thought of corona, and I thought, okay, what's the mythology of the word corona? And of course, corona is the crown chakra, um, the crowning of a birth process, moving ourselves through the tunnel. And of course, the corona is the reflection of light that is beyond the sun. And I looked up images of the corona, and this one just grabbed me. And so just as the corona of the sun is best viewed during the eclipse, our light shines through the darkest of times. I feel like that we really have to step up our understanding of what's happening before us right now to a level of mythological perspective. And so with that as a precursor, I want to sort of keep us thinking about, why is this happening right now? Obviously, we are reaching a point of existential exhaustion as a species. We have overconsumed on this planet. We have become so separated from our souls that we have created a world of addictions, addictions to media, addictions to food, addictions to alcohol and drugs, addictions to sex, addictions to work, addictions to our addictions, right? Our woundology, addictions to our story and how much we're suffering. So we are clearly in a state of distress, deep, deep dis-ease with ourselves. And so when I sat so still last year, the healing conversation, these series of questions that had been formulating in my belly, came forward in such a profound way that I sat down and I captured them, and I negotiated with my channel, the place where all of this beautiful wisdom is coming through. And I kept saying, I want to change the name of this thing. The healing conversation just sounds so boring. Let's, my background as a marketer and a brander kept kicking me in the ass saying, make it something interesting and cool. But Spirit kept coming back and saying, no, it is this simple. It is this elegant, that we call this the healing conversation, because that covers every area of dis-ease we have in the human story. And so it starts with the question, are you ready for the healing conversation? And this is actually the first of 5 pattern interrupting questions that are created as a bridge to take us from the curse of certainty to a field of pure potentiality. And so I'm going to take you through these 5 questions today with particular emphasis and orientation to what's happening around us right now, because I believe that the two are coming into the field of awareness at the same time for a very specific reason. I don't believe that there are any mistakes. I think that everything does happen for a reason, and that timing is often the most profound statement about why things are worthy of our attention. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and start. When I do this healing conversation with folks, I always start with sort of a baseline prerequisite understanding that we have to have with each other. And I think it's so fascinating that we've come so far in our sophistication that we've learned to agree to disagree about so many things. And at the end of the day, what that does is just perpetuate the separation. We've gotten so good at agreeing to disagree that, you live in your bubble and I live in mine, and never the two shall meet. And that leaves us a long ways away from what we actually came here to do, which is, in my heart and mind, to create the unity field of oneness in physical form. So I'll talk a little bit more in a few moments about my theory of everything, but my theory of everything, and this is everything that I can't feel with my own body, but I imagine with my mind, started with, we come from a field of shared light and love. I had a sense of it 20 years ago, actually, April 7th coming up, 20 years ago. I had a pulmonary embolism and died. And while I was on the other side, I felt the distinct choice being offered me to finish my journey then or continue on. And obviously I made a choice, but it wasn't until recently that I really began to understand what that choice represented to me. And it meant that I was here to create the unity field, what I felt in that near-death experience in physical form, that's where we come from, a field of pure love and light. We come into this, we leave this boundaryless existence to come into this boundaried existence, to learn to navigate love in a boundaried world. And if you think in terms of sort of the Matrix or a video game, imagine that one of the degrees of difficulty to that existence is you don't remember who you are. But there is a secret backdoor hack built into the human operating system that will always be our compass, our inner guidance system to bring us home to ourselves. And that is that our biology defaults to love. Our physical bodies fail to thrive without love and connection. If you think about how the body is made, we have certain appetites for air, water, food. Maslow would add to that shelter, you know, and the next rung up the ladder is where we get into community, but we don't survive without community. And so we have these physical appetites, but then we have this sort of metaphysical appetite as well that's baked into our biology. So in video game terms, that would be sort of the holy grail of what we're trying to get to, is what is that secret backdoor hack that wakes us up, that holds us accountable to who we are as a species, because without love and connection, we fail to thrive. And my loves, this is the state of the human condition right now. We are failing to thrive. We are, as the beautiful letter I just read, a reflection of what's happening in nature, and nature is a reflection of what's happening to us. We are out of alignment with our own biology, which is that our source code is love. And we have been corrupted for thousands of years by the malware of fear. And that fear has been projected on from one generation to the next, to the next, to the next, to the place we are now, where we are so steeped in fear. And if you think about what's happening with the coronavirus now, this is like the crowning fear. This is the pandemic fear that we all are feeling. It wasn't enough to have global things happening, typhoid or typhoons and wildfires. We could feel it in our neighbors, but now we all have the same fear. Right? So instead of being afraid of each other, now we are focused on the fear that is not even outside of us, but it's inside of us, right? So how many news stories right now are that we could all be walking around with this virus and not know it for days or weeks, right? And so we've gone from being afraid of each other, something outside of ourselves, to being afraid of something that has entry like a Trojan horse into our human operating system. So this is a profound metaphorical, mythological moment for us to be paying attention to. And so my theory of everything is we come from that oneness to recreate it here in physical form. Now, if I can get somebody to agree that the human operating system defaults to love, then I have a chance that there can be a healing conversation had between us. If, on the other hand, if somebody does not believe that love is our source code, they may come from sort of the survival of the fittest mindset, then they're not going to relate to anything I'm about to say. So I share this with you because as I drove around, I went on a walkabout 2 years ago. I bought a little motorhome, and that's a whole other story. On the long day, I can give more detail to that. But I kept walking up to total strangers in RV parks to have the healing conversation. And I would ask questions about, did they believe that it was possible for us to live in harmony? And so many times I would get people to say, yes, but, right? There's a want for it, but don't know how to get there. And so I kept coming back to, but do you believe that we're here to love and be loved? Do you believe that is what all the wise teachers and masters, Christ and Allah and Buddha and all of the sages have been trying to teach us for thousands of years, that love is the way home to ourselves. And they would say yes. And so from there, we game on. We've got this. If we can agree on this one thing, we can disagree on a lot of things and even agree to disagree on those things. But to find our way home, we must agree to agree on this one thing. And that is that we are here to love each other and to experience love in every flavor under the sun. So there are 5 primary questions to the healing conversation. And these 5 questions, we're going to go through them each individually and unpack them a little bit. And I always say to people, take care. These are trick questions. I don't want you to answer with any conviction, any one of them. I want you to just let these questions just sort of permeate and marinate in your own body. Feel these questions. Don't just listen to them. Don't just hear them. I want you to process them through your body, because your body, your inner guidance system, that's what's happening right now, is we are resetting our human operating system back to love. And so by letting these questions have a little bit of sway with our thinking for a little while, it's part of that reset. So if we can agree that we're going to not try and commit, I don't expect to change anybody's mind during this presentation. I just want to invite some intellectual curiosity, maybe some spiritual open-heartedness, to explore a framework that, from my mindset, has the potential to heal all that has led us up to this moment of existential crisis that we're in. And I love this quote by Albert Einstein. He says, "If I had an hour to solve a problem and my life depended on the solution, I would spend the first 55 minutes determining the proper questions to ask. For once I knew the proper question, I could solve the problem in less than 5 minutes." See, I think we've been asking the wrong questions. And this moment in time, the next several weeks, months, and potentially years of shift that we're going to go through is going to cause us to ask very different questions than we've been asking before. And so with that, I'm going to dive right into question number 1, and that is, are you ready for the healing conversation? As I first prepared these slides, I was kind of writing a little booklet to give to people when they come to my group sessions with this. And my own belly was like, are you ready for the healing conversation? Not so fast, say the wounded parts, right? Like, you're taking me from 0 to 60. Like, I want to heal, but wait, what's it going to cost me? What am I going to have to give up to heal? Like, there's this inner negotiation that jumps up right away. Like, what does this mean? Are you ready? Is that an invitation or is that a challenge, right? Some people take it as a threat versus an opportunity to explore. And I think right now, if I ask people, are you ready for the healing conversation? There might be some interest, but I think 6 weeks from now, when all of our structures of safety and power and dependency fail us, and they will, we are going to be ready to answer a very different way. Yeah, we're ready for the healing conversation. And so I feel like there's so many wise sages that have said, we're the ones we're waiting for. Dalai Lama recently said, no more incarnations. The next Buddha is us, right? There's just so many indicators that this is on us to make new meaning about the human story, what we're here to experience. And I love Carl Jung's quote here. He says, as far as we can discern, the sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light of meaning in the darkness of mere being. See, meaning making, what we decide this corona moment means to us, this crowning moment of human interconnectedness. I mean, just think about the paradoxical perspective right now of we have to be in service to the greater good, but we can't be physically with each other. This is an amazing moment, a pattern interrupt in our old way of thinking about things. Like we've been so about the individual and individualism that we've lost our touch of communalism. We haven't understood our interconnectedness. And now the corona moment is giving us that gift of perspective that I stay home not because I'm going to be vulnerable, but I might make you vulnerable. In other words, my choices now have a direct impact on others. And they always have, but they were never life-threatening before. This is a moment where we're beginning to see how our choices are not individual choices. They really are collective choices. What we choose to believe, how we choose to behave, are no longer seen as individual choices. They really are collective, impacting choices. So I say to people, you know, there's a lot to this question. Are you ready? You know, what does ready mean? What does it mean to be ready? You know, that takes some time to unpack that. But I think we're reaching a point of readiness. We feel it as the existential fear hits its crescendo moments, and we're not there yet. When people we know start to die, when our health becomes threatened, then we're going to know that readiness comes with the release of certainty. Remember, this pattern interrupting process is about bridging the curse of certainty to a field of pure potentiality. We have become so attached to our certainty of who's right and who's wrong and how we're supposed to live. And we even try and preach it and legislate it onto each other. This is a moment where all of the scaffolding of our story is crumbling around us. And so we're going to have to embrace uncertainty at a level that we have pretty much avoided. The vast majority of us, we live a pretty privileged life. We don't live hand to mouth, most of us that'll be seeing this presentation. But there are millions, billions of human beings who've lived in the edge of uncertainty their whole lives. Food uncertainty, opportunity uncertainty. This is a leveling event. And so the question of readiness, it'll come in a wave. Some are ready now. Some have been long past ready for this healing conversation across the planet. But it's time for everybody to start to feel in their bellies different questions. The fear will transmute into rage and anger and greed and behaviors that will not be very flattering. But the good news is the vast majority of humans, they're ready. They're long past ready. And so this healing conversation is a tool that I want to share with the world, not from any sense of ownership or economic benefit, but just let's start having this conversation. We need to be having healing conversations with families, with friends, with co-workers, with religions, with racism, with gender, with sexuality, with food, with economic policy, with institutional policy. The level of healing conversation we have to be having across this planet is as rich and diverse as all the places we found to create separation with each other. So don't answer this question because it's a big one. Because if you really want to say yes to this question, you're going to have to keep going through all the other questions, and there's a lot of work. There's a lot of emotional lifting, heavy lifting that comes with this healing conversation. So I say to folks, don't answer this question, because it will, you won't be able to live up to the answer until you answer these other questions. So the next question is, do you believe we can live in harmony? And, you know, depends on who I'm asking, but I'll get an answer to, oh, I hope so. I believe we're capable of it, but ... right? We all have our fill in the blank statements about why we think the world is broken beyond repair. And so again, this can be a trick question. This one's booby-trapped, because we can't not even imagine, hold the conditions of thinking in our minds and the resonance in our hearts to believe that our human story is one of love. This is a love story. We're here, and I have a dear friend that says it's a love story and we're fucking it up. I think, you know, I think we are missing the point here. We came here to love and be loved. Our biology tells us so. We didn't come here to fear and be feared. Our biology isn't wired for fear. Fear is a tool that keeps us safe when there's a saber-toothed tiger running at us, when there's a threat, an immediate threat to our physical well-being. But fear has now become such a pervasive reaction to so much of what happens in the human story. Part of what I want to talk about today is consenting to the human experience fully and completely. And I will tell you that most people have not fully consented to the human experience, because they are coming from a place of fear, deep somatic fear about the human story. And so as we go through these questions, we're going to feel that resistance to healing. And that resistance comes down to that fear that's sort of baked into our story, the epigenetics of our existence, you know, the nature versus nurture. If you think of us coming from this field of love and light and unity and connection, and then we come into this fully boundaried experience, and we come through the womb of another, that separation can be eased with love and nurturing, and for some it works out really well, but there's a lot of us that land in a bumpy place, and that easing into the human story isn't made easy. And so there is a resistance to the human experience because it hasn't felt safe in our bodies. So here we are coming to that existential crisis moment as a species, and what we're experiencing now is that fear tied to our bodies. So just notice the mythology of this moment. Don't get bogged down in the numbers and the detail. Feel the energetics of what's happening, and how our bodies are feeling what's happening. So do you believe we can live in harmony? You know, this is where people start to really show the boundaries of what their beliefs are. And so it's an interesting conversation, like, what is harmony? What does it look like? But do you believe we, the collective we, can achieve this? So we had to rewrite this question. We had to shift the words, and words matter. Words and how we use them matter. I love Michael Meade, the mythologist, who, you know, the word apocalypse means to reveal. End times doesn't mean like one day we're here and the next day we're not. He says ends are like the fraying of fabric. Well, our social fabric has been fraying for a long time, and that weave is just coming apart at the seams right now. And so it's up to each of us to take our thread of the fabric of life and begin to weave it in a whole new way. And so we have to shift this question a little bit to really achieve that. So here's how we reframe question number 2 from, do you believe we can live in harmony, to what would we have to believe, we collectively, to live in harmony? And now Now we're into this whole new conversation, right? Now it's not what do you believe and I believe, but what would we collectively have to believe? And so this is where I sat so still last year and felt into what that we belief would have to be. And it's that we come from love, that we are a manifestation of love, and that where we're going is love. That there are no degrees of glory, there are no good and bad humans. We're all just humans trying to work through this human experience, right? And so I hold the view that the way to do that is to hold the perspective that whatever is happening around me is happening for me, not to me. Life happens for me, not to me. And in that way, even when somebody does something that is harmful, I can look at that and say, okay, that was an unconscious moment for them, but I was in the field. I'm part of that experience. How does that experience teach me, inform? Does it inform better boundaries? Does it inform better discernment for my choices? So what would we have to believe? We'd have to believe that we come from love, that we're doing the best we can, that sometimes we don't get it right, that generationally we've passed on a lot of fear to each other, and that we are waking up, each of us individually, and now I believe collectively. This corona moment is a collective reboot on the human operating system back to compassion and love. And we as humans are good. We're at our best when things are at their worst. Isn't that funny how we behave one way when things are going well? We can be greedy, we can have prejudices, we can have behaviors and beliefs that don't serve the greater good, but somehow when the greater good is under threat, it brings out the best in us, most of us. There'll be a few for whom this will be a very dark time, but even they will come through this on the other side, changed by it. The question is, how will we be changed by this? Will we be better or worse for having gone through this crowning moment together? We have to ask different questions about what we would have to believe about each other. And then ask the next question, question number 3, about what gets in the way of us holding those beliefs about each other. Like, on a good day, I think every human can say that love is our operating system. But on most days, we put conditions on that love. Like, I can love people that look and act and believe what I believe, but not others. And you know, that's not what all the wisdom keepers have told us over the years. Those wisdom keepers, those sacred teachers, whether that be Christ or Buddha or Allah or all the deities, anytime we've exalted truth outside of ourselves, we've deified it in a way that it has a structure and a form and a personality. And for me, my theory of everything is we are the deity. We have within us the knowing of how to be noble and godlike. And that's not blasphemy. That just says that I agree we were made in the image of goodness. Now, your theory of everything may put more structure to it than mine, but at the end of the day, I think we're saying the same thing. And so again, we have to peel away all of our beliefs and biases about what is truth or where truth comes from to really proceed on this healing path together. So that takes us to question number 3. And before we can get there, we have to do sort of an internal check on ourselves to see where our operating system is today. So this is like a virus scan on the human operating system. So, you know, we're about to go in and unpack the malware of fear, where it comes from. And before we do that, we're going to scan our operating system. So this beautiful chart comes from David Hawkinson, and he calls it his consciousness scale. And I look at fear right now, and it measures 100 on sort of the harmonic frequencies that we measure feelings in our bodies. And there's scientists who do MRIs and other electromagnetic studies on the human form, and we know when we're seeing and visually experiencing certain types of stimuli, our bodies respond differently. Well, they've measured what all of these different expressions show up as from an energetic standpoint, a frequency standpoint. And so fear is kind of like, it's 100. And I thought, well, fear would be the worst of it, but no, fear with regret and apathy and blame and shame can take us down to a point where we barely want to be here. This is the be here scale. This is the B scale, right? If you are at a 20 on the B scale, you're not having a great day. You're not having a good life. And so I share this with people to show them that, you know, look at the distance between fear and love. Look at the road, the terrain that we have to traverse in order to live at a higher frequency with ourselves. And these higher frequencies line up with well-being in the body, right? Connection and love and well-being. So hang on, I'm getting some messages here from some people. Let's see. Let's go to the chat here. Oh yeah. I'll make sure you guys get a copy of these slides. Thank you. All right, so we'll keep moving on here. So this frequency map is a self-diagnostic. I would never have somebody, you know, say, well, I'm operating from, you know, 150 today, or today is a 540 day for me. You know, this is your internal check-in with yourself. This doesn't have to be something that, you know, we publish on our sleeve, but think about how cool it would be if people did have that number on their forehead, right? We'd know how to approach them. Somebody who's operating at 20, we would hold with such tender gloves, because they have, through no fault of our own, taken on a suffering that is for no other reason than they exist, right? Like all of these shame and guilt and apathy and grief and fear, anger, pride, all of these are learned behaviors. Our core behavior, babies show us every day. That's why we love innocence so much, that our core behavior is love and connection. And every time those bonds of love and connection are not tended, we move further and further down this list of feelings. And so I did a thing many years ago, and I think this is a great exercise for everyone to do, this power of 10. We were told to make a list of the 10 people we spend the most time with, from greatest to least, and then to put a number alongside each of those names of 1 to 10, 10 being this person is, you admire them, they have characteristics and attributes that you would choose for your, I'll have what he or she is having, right? And so people that you really admire and value, they're not perfect human beings, but boy, gosh, golly, they spend a lot of time in that joy, love, peace end of the spectrum. And so, you know, some people will get 8s, 9s, 10s. Some people on your list will end up being the 4 or 5 category. And so the potential here is 10 people times the score of 10, so 100 points. If you're between 80 and 100 points, you're probably living your best life. You're surrounding yourself with people who have asked more of themselves, and by association, ask more of you to ask more of yourself, right? To hold yourself accountable to those feelings that keep you at those lower vibrational places, to be an observer of your life, not hijacked by the emotions of your life. And so if you're 80 to 100, you're probably right on path in your story. If you're 60 to 80, you might want to look at those primary time wasters, those people in your story that maybe because they've been your friend for 30 years, or they're your parent or your sibling or your spouse, or somebody that you have a connection with that is resonating at a lower frequency. You have to make some choices. You have to perhaps sit down and have healing conversations with those people to move to a higher frequency of, put some courage into the relationship, and at a minimum get to a place where you can be in a place of acceptance and forgiveness with each other. I mean, there's so many ways in our personal relationships that we can tweak and tune them to make them more honest and real for ourselves. And then, if your score was lower than 60, you maybe want to replace a few people on that list with people or inputs, and I'll say more about that. Replace those, the time that you're spending with people that are not holding you to a higher outcome, with inputs and people who will. And those inputs could be, I had a friend who was, kind of an introvert, didn't really love spending tons of time with people, but filled up her loving cup by reading biographies, by listening to audiobooks on great teaching and teachers. And so you can create better inputs to your field of awareness consciously. Now, my score when I did this years and years ago was even lower than 60. And it was hard, but I made some big life changes as a result of what I learned here. And those life changes were my major pattern interrupt, because I didn't want to live at these lower frequencies. I'd had a taste of those higher frequencies, those ecstatic moments where you feel like you're living your truest self. And those created an appetite for more. And so that, I think, is what's true for every human being on the planet, that we've all experienced moments of ecstatic bliss in human form. And what's being offered to us on a silver platter called the Corona platter right now is the opportunity to reset our human operating system back to love. This is a moment where you can say, I'm willing to put away all of my biases, who's right, who's wrong, just to show up, to fully show up as a human being in alignment with source code of love. So that Power of 10 exercise is something you can do with your friends and family, and have a conversation about, how are we spending our time? Could we be doing it more nourishing, in more nourishing ways with each other? I think Zoom, this platform, and other technology platforms are going to see a huge boost in use over the next period of time, because we're going to take advantage of this quiet time that we're having to connect in more meaningful ways. All right. So question number 3. Question 1 was, are you ready? Question 2 is, what would we have to believe to live in harmony? And this one, can we tell the difference between truth and bias? How good is our discernment to know what's knowable and what's belief, right? And so this is where racism, misogyny, the patriarchy, gender discrimination, the wounded masculine, the wounded feminine, all the ways that we have found our human operating system as corrupted. This is where we unpack all of that. And I got this beautiful download about this piece, this question mark. This question in particular, that bias, B-I-A-S, is an acronym for believe it as so. Like, do we know what we believe as so versus what we know is truth? And so I spent probably 6 weeks, deep, deep, deep medicine journey work on this particular piece of the equation, because this is, until the corona moment, this has been our greatest, our weakest part of the human story, our Achilles, if you will. And it's being obliterated right now by the coronavirus, because we have found so many ways to separate ourselves through gender discrimination, through racism, skin color, ethnicity, religion. You know, we're all just points of light taken on a representation, an avatar in a physical world, all leaves on the tree, each one catching the light a little differently. And yet we have found so many ways to make one better than the other. And that comes from original fear, original wounding, original separation from our knowing of who we are. It's baked into the story, and on a longer day we could spend more time about how my theory of everything really sees that separation as the catalyst to bring us to this moment of reconnection. But for now, we have to be willing to look at all the ways our systems, our structures have been created based in fear, not love. And so the sweeping shortages that we're seeing right now, most of us, I mean, I'll eat beans and rice for a month. We can survive. Most of us will get through this, but there is a larger segment of the population across the planet that has been teetering on the edge of existential drama forever. And there is no soft landing for a lot of those people. And so how did they end up in our ecosystem in such a vulnerable place? And this is what we're going to have to face right now. Man's inhumanity to man is going to be on full display across this planet in the coming weeks and months. The hard choices that are going to have to be made about who gets to live and who is beyond saving, because we refuse to work together to build a structure, a society, institutions and policies that take care of all of us, that we have accepted that it's okay for some to suffer for the mere act of being human. And that's not acceptable. That's not who we are. And we know this. We cannot heal humanity until the resistance of the mind, what we believe is true, believe it as so, surrenders to what we know is true, the safety of the soul, is that we are one. And that your suffering becomes my suffering. The corona moment is showing us that I cannot act as an individual in this moment because I put others at risk. And if I put others at risk, I also bring more risk on myself. This is a visceral reboot on the communal nervous system that we share. This is such a sacred moment that we are in, that if we can hold that perspective, we can approach this not from a place of fear, but a place of love and curiosity and service and big creative minds to step into the void where we have never approached topics of, we've got this wrong, how do we redo this? How do we reboot what the human safety net looks like? What is the baseline of dignity that every human, that we agree to agree, because we agree to agree that love is our operating system. What is the baseline of human existence that we are all authors of collectively? I know I'm living a privileged life, but I can feel that my individual privilege can be a detriment in this moment if I don't act in a communal way, right? You see so many people who've already, they're on board. They got it. They know exactly what's happening right now, and they are stepping up. You're seeing people giving away things that they know are going to make it better for others. Things, the economy of surviving at a higher frequency is shifting, right? Greed and avarice and fear has created our economy up till now, but that's not going to work going forward. So this is a moment where people are stepping up to the spirit of Aini, which is Quechua for sacred reciprocity, that we all have more than we need. So we're going to see a redistribution of stuff on this planet and wealth on this planet. Somebody said, Michael Bloomberg spent $350 million on his campaign. There are 350 million Americans. If he had just given us each $1 million, what would that do to lift us out of poverty? What would that do if we collectively decided that the safety of the soul for each of us is in the safety of the whole for all of us, right? So question number 3, we could spend a whole day unpacking our biases. But it's hard work. And I just love this quote by Adyashanti. He says, in my experience, everyone will say they want to discover the truth right up until they realize that the truth will rob them of their deepest held ideas, beliefs, hopes, and dreams. The freedom of enlightenment means much more than the experience of love and peace. It means discovering a truth within us that will turn your view of self and life upside down. For one who is truly ready, this will be unimaginably liberating. But for one who is still clinging in any way, this will be extremely challenging indeed. How does one know if they are ready? One is ready when they are willing to be absolutely consumed, when they are willing to be fuel for the fire without end. And that fuel is love. Absolute love, unconditional love, human love, consenting to the human experience. That's what's at stake right now. We consent when it's going well, but we don't necessarily consent when it's off the rails. And we will have to get through this. So question number 4. This is the big one. This is what gets in the way of us answering all the others confidently. Like, are you ready? Oh, I don't know. Not so fast, say the wounded parts. Do you believe we could? I don't know. People aren't always kind. I'm not always kind. Right? Our own story gets in the way of what we think is possible. We can't even hold the conditions of thinking that create the possibility for a world where we live in harmony, because we are out of harmony with our own light. So the greatest wonder of the world will not show up as a physical monument to human ingenuity. It will be a moment, a movement of human integrity. The Corona moment for us is human integrity. Are we willing to hold ourselves accountable to the integrity of our soul, which is love? Love. Social justice is love manifested in a physical world. Are we willing to put economic justice and climate justice and food justice as our highest priorities in this healing conversation? And we can't do that if we are not coming from a place where we believe that we are capable of it, that we are enough. And so what does enough mean? How do I know if I love myself enough? What does enough feel like? Is it enough to love myself when I look good, when I look in the mirror each day? Is it enough to love myself when I feel good? Is it enough to love myself when I have abundance around me? Or does enough mean that I love myself no matter what? So that's the work, right? This is the sacred work that we must each do, to fall head over heels in love with ourselves. And we do this by creating a new perspective, on our timeline. We are building a timeline not based on our woundology, but based on the mythology of our divinity. And so what I mean by that is, right now, what we're being offered up on the Corona platter of understanding is that we are here to heal our collective timeline, to be able to look at all the things that led us to the place where we're not handling food properly, and we're not handling healthcare properly, and we're not handling children and education and economics, all the ways that we have created a world based on a construct of fear, survival of the fittest, the individual over the collective. Now we're being asked to shift to the integrity of our knowing that we're all just human beings doing the best we can on a planet. And based on the lottery of our birth, we land black, white, woman, man, Muslim, Christian, Sunni, Shiite, Catholic, Mormon, all the different ways that we form our biases in the world. All of it is a man-made construct. What is absolute about us is the love that our biology tells us is our true operating system. Everything else falls in the category of a theory of everything. And so to love ourselves and to love each other, we have to question our theory of everything. We have to make sure that our theory of everything lines up with love. If it lines up with fear, if it creates division, separation, judgment, shame, it lines up with fear. Think of it this way, that love comes from within. Fear comes from outside of us, right? When we outsource our power to fear, we become separated from our own light, our own loving awareness of ourselves, right? And so this integrity, this movement of integrity is what we're in right now. Putting everything we believe is true about how we survive on this planet in question. That curse of certainty. Religion is a bias. We believe it is so. It has a curse of certainty attached to it. I was baptized Catholic as a baby. I became evangelical Christian at about age 13 and then Mormon at age 20. I should have figured it out sooner. I'm a slow learner, but I had to be baptized 3 different ways by 3 different churches because theirs was the only one right way to do it. See, that curse of certainty about the one right way is killing the field of pure potentiality for us. You get to have your devotional practices. We all do. That's part of the light and lift of the human experience, to celebrate something bigger than ourselves, to hold the essence of love as a quantum field of possibilities, whether you fill that in with a masculine Christ-like form, or you fill it in with a feminine goddess form, however you need to elevate your sense of the magnificence and magnitude of love, that's great. Do it all day long. But the minute you begin to layer qualifiers, conditions for love, then that's coming from outside of us. So right now, you know, the first download I got was when my mom passed away in July of 2014. And note 2014, because the first download that I recorded was about storytelling, and that it said that we will reach a point where lies will become truth and truth will become lies. And only when we reattune to our inner guidance system will we know what truth is. Truth lines up with love. Fear does not. So when there is a dogma, a policy, an institution that imposes rules and structure from a fear-based perspective, it goes against our biological well-being. Our enlightened self-interest knows better, right? And so this movement of human integrity, to hold ourselves accountable to our thoughts, to hold ourselves accountable to our beliefs, to run them through the filter of love versus fear, is what's being asked of us in this moment. We have taken fear off the charts right now. The human operating system is going through a hard reboot. There's no slow shut down and move back up into a fully awakened state. This is a hard reboot that we're going through in this corona moment. And so the key here, and this is so counter programmed to how we've been told to behave, that the very most important thing we can do for ourselves right now is to love ourselves enough to heal, to go all in on us, to trust that our human operating system, if we are willing to shut down all the fear and just listen and marinate in what feels good to us, we're going to be able to get through this. Because when we fall in love with ourselves, we can't help but want others to have that same experience. This is where we cross the Rubicon of self-love. We go all in on ourselves. And I know so many people that have done so much good soul work to get right up to that edge of self-love, but there are those lingering, I know I've got them too, those lingering shadows, echoes of old story, old woundology, old criticisms and judgments that we took on that were not ours to carry. They were somebody else's pain and wounding spilling out into the world, projected onto others because they don't know how to hold their own pain. We need some practice in holding our own pain, being really still and not projecting it onto others, but we've been running at such pace. We've never taken the time to slow way down and be still and quiet, to feel our pain and to recognize where it comes from. It's not in the moment pain, it's an echo of something that's happened long ago, but we've attached ourselves to it. We've become experts on those wounds, so much so that we've become woundologists of our own story. And so we have to heal our timeline. We have to look at our entire human story as a hero's journey from amnesia to remembrance. The healing conversation is the remembering conversation, just remembering who we are. And whenever we lose track of our innocence, we can be viscerally reconnected to it when we look at children, puppies, kittens, animals. For me, it's cross-species stuff. Like I love dogs and chickens that play together, and stories about whales nursing dolphins, and stories about raccoons being nursed by cats, and you know that even cross-species, these guys have figured out that they do better when they show up from a place of love. And nature shows us every day the beauty of symbiotic relationships. And so we need to reset to that level of innocence. And so we love the innocence in all things. It calls to us to heal our deepest wounds. We must heed the call of innocence lost in ourselves. This is the work. And when I do private work with people, this is where we go. We go to question number 4 and look at those bits of story, beliefs, biases that are corrupting our operating system that includes loving ourselves, right? That unconditional love just isn't applied to others, it's applied to ourselves. And when we can fall head over heels in love with ourselves, we are in a position then to self-source love. Those people who show up in loving and kind ways with others who are not filled up from the inside are really showing up with an ask, not an offering. And so that's a codependent love. And it's an intrusion on our boundaries. Love is a boundary, right? Love is boundaries. That's the whole human experience, is to learn love in boundaried existence. And fear is an untended boundary of self-love, right? So we could spend a couple of hours just on that idea alone. But for today, I want to take us to the next step, which is question number 5 is, what is our role? What is your role in the healing conversation? And it's to do you, it's to heal, it's to go all in on you. So these next several weeks, oh my goodness, set up an altar to you, to your healing. Nobody's going to be coming to your house and you're going to be home a lot. You know, really surround yourself with nurturing, nourishing activities out in nature, sitting quietly. You know, we're sort of self-imposed quarantine right now, but that doesn't mean we have to remove ourselves from nature. And we can be in nature together without getting in each other's physical space, right? So this is, I think Pachamama has created an incredible invitation for all of us to go spend more time with her, sitting at the ocean, sitting by the river, really being present with the operating system of love, because we are to fall in love with her so that she can continue to provide a world for us to be in love with each other. So I want you to take this boomerang idea and imagine with me. So just close your eyes and imagine the arc of a boomerang. You can see it as it's thrown, it spins and it spins and it spins and it spins and it goes out and out and out, and then something happens. It reaches some piece, some part of its expression at the edge of its expression, and all of a sudden it turns and comes back on itself. The human story is the boomerang story, and we have been spinning around this human existence for thousands and thousands of years, and we are reaching an apex moment of expression. And I became, this came as a download, this understanding about the boomerang. And it actually came election night. And I had such certainty about how that election was going to go, as many of us did. And I was actually in Kansas the night of the election, and my luggage had been lost, my hard drive on my computer died, and when Pennsylvania fell, I went into a level of trauma that I know a lot of you can relate to, that we felt like our certainty of goodness about who we were was now not so certain anymore. Like I was shocked that people could actually not care enough to come out and have a voice in this. And that night, I you know, spending time with my guides, kept asking why. You know, I thought we were going to heal the feminine here. What's happening here? And I was shown this boomerang metaphor, and that if you go and study how boomerangs move, there are two major forces, angular momentum and gyrational torque, that are at play here. And you know, if you think about the way that a boomerang works, it has sort of a wobble effect. It's like light, dark, 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 light, dark, light, dark, light, light, dark, light, dark. So we are reaching this apex of expression of our shadow. And this Corona moment is an opportunity for us to ground in the shift, to brace ourselves for the shift, because the amount of shifting that's going to come when we come through this is going to be radical. and beautiful and destructive and enlightened and extreme and subtle. It's we're moving into this place where the uncertainty is guaranteed. So much so that we're going to have to keep breathing together. And that's why the app, the Be Love app, and breathing together at the top of every hour is that reset back to the oneness, to remember that we are here at this corona moment, this corona breath, this crowning breath, right? The rebirthing. I believe that life begins and ends with breath, and it is the intention with which we breathe every breath between life and death that creates the heaven or hell of our existence. And so this boomerang moment that we are very present to, when the chaos of uncertainty disrupts our patterns of certainty, we are now open to new models of thought. This is, Buckminster Fuller is a hero of mine, and you can look back over the thousands of years and see these standout minds, Maslow and Jung, and we have the codes for how to do this. There are young sages, Charles Eisenstein and others, that are bringing these codes of light back into our field of awareness. They never left us, but some have kept them safe in their bellies and are now bringing them forward. And so we are here to expand our big toe, to make sure that our theory of everything lines up with love and not fear, because only when it lines up with love will we thrive as a species. So the goal here is to have integrated compassion for what we're going through, to really show up ready to make love to the human story as we go through this birthing process, right? And every day that we don't love ourselves enough to heal, that we don't fully show up and agree that we're here to love each other, is a day full of addictions, is a day full of separation from who we are. And that addictive behavior for some can be very high functioning, like overachievers and high producers and great workhorses in the work world. And then there are some that go to low functioning addiction behaviors of gambling and pornography and theft and greed and self-harm. And the reality is they're just two ends of the same spectrum. They're both extremes of separation. And one, I was a high performing addict. So I'm more socially supported because I was an overachiever and have worked my whole life to please others, right? If you're a pleaser, you have some more security than somebody who's a rebel and says, I'm not going to play the game. One says, I'm going to play it from a place of fear, and one says, I'm not going to play it at all. And both are equally damaged in the process. So this final step in the healing conversation is to fall in love with ourselves, all of it, to look at our addictions, look at ways that we distract ourselves, that we separate ourselves from who we are. And these weeks, these quiet weeks, offer up the stillness and the reflection to be able to really connect with that part of our story. So I give this table as a way to sort of put words in our mouths to script what self-care and self-fullness looks like. I had a dear sister here last night, and she goes, but that feels so selfish. And I said, no, self-fullness. See, we have some old puritanical, patriarchal story that we're not allowed to take care of ourselves, that we have to be in service to something outside of ourselves. And that's true, but not in service to fear, in service to love. And we can't love others if we do not have a reservoir of self-love for ourselves to give, right? Otherwise, we're just offering up an empty heart. It's sincere, but it's not nourishing. I love this quote. Let me fall if I must fall. The one I will become will catch me. this has been sort of my personal true north for the last several years, as I have continued to surrender more and more of my old construct of overachievement, high performance, pleasing others, to this place of, I call it I gas, I don't give a shit anymore. And maybe that's part of being old and gray. Maybe that's just part of having paid my dues, and now I feel like I'm entitled to take care of more time, take on myself, giving myself more time. Whatever the motivation is we have to use to justify this, it's more about the this. The this is trusting ourselves enough to do that which feels good to us. See, we don't consent to the human experience because it means we're going to have to disappoint others. We are such a codependent society that we have created rules that say, if I take care of me, I'll be punished for that. I'll feel shame, I'll feel guilt, I'll feel abandonment, rejection. Instead, we should be celebrating each other, taking care of each other, right? So I had a dear friend reach out to me. She wanted to get together, and I said, I've got a lot on my plate, and I'm really feeling like I need to take care of myself. It wasn't that I couldn't fit her in. It's that I wanted to keep some personal space and time for myself as a higher priority than meeting the needs of others. And that was new to me. And her response to me was, I love your boundaries. Like, she celebrated me taking care of myself. That's the level of cheerleading we need to be at with each other, because we are going to fall. I rewrote the quote this morning. The Corona lesson for me is, let us fall if we must fall, and we must. The one we will become will catch us. This Corona moment serves up a conscious invitation to all to really tend the greater good. I love this piece of the whole story, and that is that we are capable of this. It's possible. A more divine human world starts with our imagination to believe it's possible. It's up to us. We are that powerful. We are that ready. And it is the holy truth of who we are. At some point, you'll be asked to love the unlovable, forgive the unforgivable, and bear the unbearable. And the reward will be to believe the unbelievable. This is an unbelievable moment for us, right? We can hardly believe this is happening. A lot of us are still in denial about what's happening. I read something this morning. Newt Gingrich, of all people, wrote a beautiful piece. He says, I'm in Italy right now, in America. You're not ready for this. You have no idea what this is going to do to us. His curse of certainty is meeting the unbelievable right now, right? This is a moment where we are going to, by the nature of this movement, meet our curse of certainty. And we'll either meet it with resistance or we'll meet it with love. These are the conditions for our awakening. So my religious background, the Holy Trinity was always Father, Son, Holy Ghost. I have a new Holy Trinity, and it's this, that love is the fuel. It is the juice, the vital force of our existence. And that free will is the vehicle. Every choice we make, it moves us forward down the path, right? Will I do this? Will I do that? Will I do this because it'll please others? Will I do this because I'm guaranteed more money, more certainty, more control, more privilege, more buffering from the shadow that's rising around us? Like, there is a consumption mania that we see on full display, with stocking up on items that, it's kind of like the run on the banks. Like, what do you need? What is enough right now? We have enough. If you're coming from a place of scarcity, it will never be enough. If you're coming from a place of abundance, there's always enough. There's always enough. We are smart enough. We are wise enough. We are creative enough to create a world where free will can be based in love and not fear, right? And the third leg of the Holy Trinity is meaning making. And this is where we transcend our woundology, the story of our wounds, how we got to where we are, to reach a point where we're ready to heal our timeline by the retelling of our story through the lens of love. To look at the unconsciousness of the human story up to this moment as an incredible hero's journey that the human species has taken its through to come to this moment of awakening, this moment of self-awareness, self-reconciliation, to live in integrity with our own light is what's being offered up in this moment. And it's a choice. All of this is a choice. We suffer because we choose to resist the human story as it is. If we accept it as it is, as a reflection of thousands of years of brokenness now laid out on a surgical table of self-examination, we don't have to suffer anymore. Now, there's disappointment and sorrow and loss built into the human physical story. Our mortality, our physical form brings its own loss. The physical world brings loss. You know, I always think of the 3 levels of trials that we go through. The first level is what I just call dumb shit. Stuff we do to ourselves. And then there's oh shit, stuff that happens to us that's just part of the human story. And then there's holy shit, which is what we're in the middle of right now. This holy shit moment transcends the dumb shit and the oh shit. It's you know, we can navigate a holy shit moment if we got the dumb shit out of the way. We stop doing things that go against our own self-interest, our own enlightened self-interest. And the holy shit is what's necessary to get through the oh shit of a pandemic. Like, we can choose to rise to the level of self-expression in our truest selves, which is beings of light and love right now. We can choose that. I'm choosing that. Man lives at the boundary between 2 worlds. He steps forth from the darkness of metaphysical being, shoots like a blazing meteor through the phenomenal world, the physical world, and then leaves it again to pursue his course into infinity. This is Carl Jung's theory of everything. Like, we don't know where we come from. We don't know where we're going, but we've got the now, this moment, to be present, to be here, to be love right here and now. It's not about how we end up. This is not about heaven someday, some reward down the road. This is the heaven of our own making, the choice to show up in integrity with our biological bone-knowing, life-affirming baseline that we are creatures of love. To consent to the human experience fully and completely is to transcend our human story, our wounding and our trauma. The question is, do you want to be here? And if yes, then the first question has been answered. Yes, you are ready for the healing conversation. And the truth is, a lot of people may say they're ready, but again, the only way we really want to have this conversation is if it turns out that everybody gets a win out of this one, not just ourselves, because we have begun to remember that your pain is my pain. The Corona moment, this crowning lesson for us to learn is we are not separate from each other. The healing conversation is a global invitation for all of us to want to be here. I love this quote from Bucky. He says, "There is no joy equal to that of being able to work for all humanity and doing what you're doing well. To make a world where we all feel like we matter and that we make a difference, that our being here matters, that our physical form matters, that matter matters." Right? We come from an unphysical, unmattered world to a mattered world. So here are some things you can do right now to keep some peace in your heart and to stay grounded in this Rubicon of self-love that we are being presented with collectively and individually. And so I get teased all the time about Facebook. It's a terrible platform. It's got all kinds of downsides. Yeah, it does. Technology does. Our food does. Our conditions of living and life does. Everything's got some downside to it. But this is a moment where we look around us and we take stock and inventory of what is working for us. And right now, and has been for a while, my Facebook page has become a holy shrine to me. I have been able to fine-tune my algorithm so that I am fed every day beautiful words and imagery and feeling and sentiment and wisdom from others who are creating and curating and sharing and moving on. And I'm going to recommend that you, in this time you have sitting at home paying attention to what's happening in the world, curate your Facebook page, fill it with beautiful quotes, beautiful imagery, beautiful stories, your own story. Talk about what you're experiencing and how you're feeling and being vulnerable and sharing not our accomplishments, but our hearts and what holds us and what holds us together. You unfriend those people who want to fill your feed with grief and sorrow. You know, we're still going to have an election in a few months. Who knows what that's going to look like? But let's not fill up our feed with fighting and fear right now. Let's fill up our feeds with love. Let's be conscious about how we consume media. Limit the amount of time that we take in what's happening. Pay attention to what you have to, but don't marinate in the grief of what's happening, because it will overwhelm us all. It's a tsunami of grief that's coming forward, and we have to have grief connection with each other. Isn't it interesting that it is in our shared grief that we're going to find each other again? Because loss from oh shit moments is universal. It absolutely is a bonding reflection that we have with each other. A mirror moment of loss is a connecting moment for all of us. We're going to show up for the greater good, because in that we create the conditions of harmony, potentiality for harmony that have been missing up till now. We're going to see acts of bravery and courage and humanitarian cohesiveness that we have not seen in many, many years, not in many generations. So this is our moment to show up for the greater good. We're going to move from showing and going, which is the old sort of dig me and then I'm out of here if I don't like you, to mending and tending. My grandmother used to always have a mending basket. And children today don't even know what the word mend means, right? Mending is to bring things back to wholeness. And it takes tending to do that. We are tending the human garden in a way that is tender and sacred right now. And then again, I want you to move from woundology to mythology. This is the creative mind having fun with this moment. Me going back and looking up Corona and seeing that it's the crowning, that, use language that speaks to metaphor, because we are living in something so profoundly extraordinary. When I saw imagery for what was going to be coming, I never saw war. I just saw grief and sorrow and stillness. And I never knew it was going to come this way. But here it is. I mean, This is a mythological moment. Our president and what's happening all around the world has been mythological for a while now, and we've just been sort of dancing with the absurdity of it all. But it is the divine comedy that we are living out, that we can no longer fight the enemy outside of us. We're fighting an enemy that is microscopic, that we have no control over, that is beyond our current technologies and systems and ways of being to be in charge of it. It's in charge of us. It's going to kick our ass. This is the Trojan horse of love coming at us, sneaking in to our bodies to reset our human operating system back to love. I wrote this the other day because it's so present for me in my body. Can you feel it, my loves? The feeling of pure potentiality, the beckoning and the becoming, the awakening that invites the death of certainty. Notice the wise one standing by our sides. Notice the peace in the heart of chaos, that it's no more than a mindful breath away, that breath at the top of every hour. To be alive, to witness this moment, to bring your soul's fire to the gathering, to feel your belonging in the sacred reveal, the apocalypse, the reveal of who we are. It's ours to feel all of it now and forever, not be afraid of it, but to feel it. Feel the fear, yes, but also feel the beckoning of the becoming. We feel this moment as sacred. We can put meaning to this that creates animus and energy to begin to rewrite our story. You know, we are here to heal our timeline. We are here to examine our human story through the lens of love and write a new chapter. A chapter that lines up with the true essence of the characters, our character in the story. So a while back, I got this download, and it's basically, this is an enabling system. This is a framework for bringing us back together in this reboot. So we're going to be separate for a while, but how do we re-engage without going back to old patterns of being? And so this is where, you know, I when I first got the download about the top of the hour breath, the Be Love app, I kept saying, but heart entrainment comes first. And it was like, yeah, but heart is not so conscious that people will pay attention to it. Breath, on the other hand, is. So as we breathe together, we're also entraining our hearts back to each other. And if you know anything about heart math, and if you don't, look it up, heart math, you can see where heart and then breath. And so as we reach that place of harmonized intention with each other, that intentional top of the hour breath of more love into the world, the next step is singing together, humming and chanting, and moving into that place where that vibrational throat chakra finds its leveling point of truth again, that we begin to remember our voice of who we are. So we're going to sing together. And there's one song that I just speaks so much to what is true in this moment, and I'm going to sing it for you, by Lindsay Scott. You don't have to know the way knows the way. You don't have to plan the way, trust the way, feel your way, the way knows, the way knows, the way knows the way. The way knows the way. We don't have to know. We don't have to have certainty about where we're going. If we're going from a place of love, love is the way. It'll show us. we'll know the next right step, because we'll learn to feel what truth and love feels like in our bodies again, by singing together and moving and dancing and drumming. And we're going to have healing circles and periods of forgiveness and grieving rituals where we get to come together and forgive each other for all that has come before, all the burdens that we have carried forward into this moment. We leave at the altar of remembrance. That is what is being offered to us. And from there, we move out into a field of morphic resonance where we resonate in the shift together, and we unpack all the wisdom that is ours to hold. Each of us has an important piece, an important ingredient to add to the soup, the primordial soup of rebirth. This is the chrysalic moment that we're in as we move from the caterpillar to the butterfly. We have to go into this period of cocoon together to dissolve the old constructs of who we were, to breathe into the imaginal buds of who we are to become. The beckoning of the becoming is beyond us now. It is present, it is there, it is us. We know it, we feel it, and now we just need to surrender to it and allow it. Building out these rings of trust is a joyful movement. There's a no more FOMO, fear of missing out. This is a joy of joining in moment that we all get to be present for. There's nothing to fix in this moment. It is perfect. It is beautiful. It is watching nature carve a glacier. It is painful, but exquisite in its expression. And that's where we are. This is the movement. And so I will end here and bring you all back in to answer some questions and ask some. And I would just, while I have you all here, just invite you to be a part of this breathtaking movement of love, to support us at ofOneBreath.org. The app, the breathing app, the Be Love app will be ready in July, but we need to start coming together now to breathe and build this community and share this healing conversations with our friends and families. And we can do it online together. We can do it based on specific topics. If you have a group you want to do the healing conversation with and you want me to do something online, I make myself available for that. This is the time where I get to offer up my sacred gifts and share them with the world and not worry about the money. Just let me be there to support each of you. May it be so. May it be love. Aho. So I'll bring you all back in, my loves. Unmute, unmute, unmute. Unmute yourselves. Yeah, if you can get there before I do. Don't be shy. Hi, loves. How was that for you? Don't be shy.
Amazing.
Oh.
What grabbed your hearts?
Being present with you
Mm.
and hearing the steps and really feeling into each of them and breathing in the potentiality of that which I instinctively have felt, and yet to hear you speak it validates and strengthens, and knowing that what you are doing is consistently making this available. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you, sister. Where does this leave your heart today? What does this inspire for you? Anyone, just jump in.
I think for me, just being aware on a day-to-day basis when I come up against other people who are living in fear. How does that feel in my body? Mm-hmm. What does my thought process about that end up being? And remembering to breathe love into it when it happens.
There's going to be a lot of hard edges, because the fear manifests in all kinds of projected ways right now. And so, this whole campaign, some of you have already jumped in and donated money. I don't know if you can see this button. It says, I'll go first. Everybody who's given money to the Be Love app, I'm sending these buttons out to. I'm actually wearing mine. I don't know if you can see it here, but the idea is to have somebody look at your button and go, what do you mean I'll go first? And what you're going to say to them is, I'll go first to say that I feel like the world is kind of broken right now, and the way that we come together is to breathe with each other. We can't agree on many things, but if we can agree that we're here to learn to love each other, I'm taking a breath at the top of every hour, putting my breath where my heart is. And so I'll go first. I'm not afraid to look silly. I'm not afraid to look woo-woo. I'm not afraid to look outrageous. And when somebody is losing their shit, you can just look at them and go, just breathe with me. Just take a breath with me. Let's take it down a notch and take a breath. One of my dear sisters who's been supporting me from the start on all this, she had a coworker that she was really struggling with, and she knew that they were going into a very tender meeting with each other. And she said, would you do me a favor? Would you just take a breath with me at the top of the hour so that we can come into this meeting with loving intention as our, field of awareness? And the woman did it with her. And she said, it has transformed their relationship. Another mother and daughter combination where the daughter and the mother agree on very, very little. But they're now living together with a 2-year-old under their feet, and they have to learn to get along. And so they have downloaded on their phones the Chime app, which is free and does a good job of prompting that top of the hour breath, and they're breathing together. And she said it's made all the difference. They see each other in that moment and say, I love you. Like, I think we forgot who we are with each other. So that breath is going to help with that. Jenny Lou, thank you for sharing that. Who else has got a contribution here? Don't be shy. Go ahead. Scott? Yeah, you're not coming through, Scott.
Good.
Speak again.
Sorry,
Scott, I'm sorry. Yours is not coming through in a way that it's we can understand what you're saying. You're getting a lot of sort of distortion in the sound. So I'm going to say, maybe put your thoughts in the Zoom box, in the chat box over here, and give us your feedback. Anybody else? Vicki, you reached out to me. How are you feeling now? Can you hold a different frame for this moment?
Hi there, Edie. Yeah, I think that for me, one of the things that just brought a huge smile to my face is when you said, this is the time for a reboot. I just broke out in this huge smile, and I'm like, yes, it is. Yes, it definitely is a time for a reboot.
Yeah.
We've been living in fear and not taking care of ourselves, not taking care of our loved ones, just, going with the flow every single day and not being aware of how much we have to love and how much love we need to receive. So yeah, it's time for a reboot. Even though it's fearful.
It's scary. Like, this is a hard ass reboot, right? You don't know what things are going to be like on the other side. Your whole
Oh, there goes my cat. I'm going to mute.
Okay, thank you, Jenny Lou. Think about what happens when you have 900 things open on your computer and it freezes, and you have to push the hard reboot button. You're not sure you're going to be able to save what was there before. It may not, carry over when you come back online. This is the death of certainty that is necessary, because there's an ego death in that. Our ego attaches to certainty. And so this is a huge collective ego death a story that we've told ourselves that we're a very civilized society. We've got this. No, we don't. We don't. We've never collectively consented to the human experience. This experience sucks for so many, so
Mhm.
many. And we can't live out of harmony with others in the collective and not feel the grief within our own bodies. This is a collective grief. I think so many people I work with in medicine space, specifically, they're carrying grief and they keep interpreting it as their own physical body's grief, but it's collective. We
Mhm.
cannot separate ourselves from what we are connected to. It's all energy. And so right now this is a circuit breaker moment. And it blew. It's blowing. And
It did.
it's
Mhm.
we either approach it with fear or we embrace it with love. And for me, I always say to people, look, if my theory of everything is wrong, that we don't default to love, that somehow I've misinterpreted my body's signals, that there's some other outcome when I die, although having had a taste of it, I've
Been there,
been
done
been there, done that.
that.
Could argue a little bit maybe, but to be able to say to each other, it doesn't matter what our theory of everything is. If we get this love part right, we're going to be okay. Your devotional practice gets to be different from mine. You don't get to legislate yours into my bedroom. I don't get to legislate mine into your worship. You get to have yours. I get to have mine. That's what physical boundaries create, is sovereignty of thought, right? That's what we signed up for.
Mhm.
The amnesia guaranteed sovereignty of thought so that we could manifest together. So even the shadow, even the really dark stuff that's happening in the world today, that's sovereignty of thought. What if everything...
Edie, it's the top of the hour.
Oh, thank you. Let's do that. Then, and we'll answer more questions, but so what is this loving intentional breath about? Imagine your phone goes off right in this moment, and that 528 love hertz tone goes off, and you take that breath. What are we breathing in? We're breathing in the pure potentiality of this moment to connect across the planet. And within a minute, of taking that breath, we're going to be able to see how many people are breathing and where, and that we're all taking this breath. And imagine now what that level of sacred witnessing feels like across the planet. And Lauren, I don't know you, beautiful woman, so I'm going to pick on you next. But imagine you're sitting on a bus, and
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
your phone goes off, and somebody else's goes off, and you're going to find each other in the crowded noisiness of life to have a moment of, I call it Joji moment, of seeing each other, not for skin color, not for expression in physical form, but for the light that is unique and true in each and every one of us. That's the sacred witnessing that this app is going to bring forward. And we're going to have passion pods where we get to sign up and breathe with people that are wanting to save the soil, and others that want to save healthcare, and others that want to imagine education, or reimagine policy, or reimagine food, or reimagine elderly, or reimagine all the places where we've created otherness and separation. And we're going to breathe with those people too. And we're going to have a forum where people can come together and upload all of their ideas about, hey, I just thought of this really cool way that we could have. I got a download the other day about subtle shifts, like Neighborhood Watch goes from Neighborhood Watch, which is all about spooky bad guy out there, to Neighborhood Reach, which is about connection.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Right? So the subtle shifts that we can make in our existing structures just by changing the language. So much of our language is fear-based, toxic fear-based, and some would refer to that as patriarchally oriented. I'm electing to use the word patriarchy less and less, and really naming it as toxic fear, because it's been inappropriately assigned to men only. because of the term patriarch. And that's wrong, because women carry as much fear, and it's become a malignant fear in our inability to come together as sisters, because we don't trust each other. That's old toxic fear getting in the way of us showing up, because sisters, this is a feminine movement. Breath, birth. We got this. We know how to do this. This is what we were made for, right, Lauren? Tell me
Totally.
tell me your heart.
Oh my goodness. I had not known who you were until yesterday, and I got from a cousin of mine that sent me what you had written, and I went to it, and my heart was just like so opened, because I've been feeling these things but not knowing how to name them, talk about them, speak them through, because I had no language. And I'm in such gratitude for your words and what you're doing and what you've set up, and I've taken notes in this little fun creative way, because I'm an artist, and I'm so full right now with feeling very, very hopeful and positive. I had a really crappy 2019, and I understand why now.
Yeah.
It was all about what was coming and all of these things that were happening to me. Just the universe showing me that things are coming to change everything. And I have felt it but not understood it. And,
Right.
and I understand it now. And I'm very hopeful, and I'm very excited. And I will share this with others and my communities. And I want to do Facebooking things now that are more positive. And I don't normally do Facebooking things. So thank you so much for just being you and for sharing this with us, because it is time. It is our time. We will rise, and we are rising, and we are awakening. And with each of us together, I know it is possible. I absolutely do.
I do too.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sister. I have been chasing this moment my whole life. I think we all have. We have felt this deep in our soul, that we are better than how we're showing up. And it breaks my heart as a mom just to see our children paying the price for our willful unconsciousness. Now it is a choice to remain unconscious. We know better. We must do better. We just do. And there's so many people like you, Lauren, and me, and Jenny Lou, and Vicki, and we're all doing our little thing, like little islands of goodness and consciousness in our own world. And what we've got to step into now, and this is why the collective breath elevates us to this, where we are not islands of consciousness, we are the fucking ocean. And what's left are islands of unconsciousness, and we're just going to surround that unconsciousness with love. It only takes 3.5% of the population to create a radical shift in beliefs. That number has proven out over resistance movements over time. That's only 11 million people in the United States. I have 800 people. We only had 200 a month ago, but we now have 800 people on this Facebook page. If we could get to 10,000 and everybody reached out to 5 more and 5 more and 5 more, getting to 11 million is not an impossible task, right? It's doable. This healing is not so far removed from the realm of possibilities, because we're doing it in our own selves. Now we come together to witness it in each other, to heal out loud, to have healing conversations around race and religion and misogyny and toxic masculinity and toxic femininity and toxic everything, all that toxic fear. And how we could be having these conversations for the next year online together, and spreading the gospel of love and leaving all the other gospel of conditioned behaviors to get access to love behind. This whole fear-based religion thing, I'm sorry, I go to church, celebrate any way you want, but do not tell me that yours is the only one right way. That just does not work. We are here to express uniquely, each of us. And if we congregate, it is to celebrate our unique expressions and not to weaponize it. And that's a big piece for me in this movement. I look at my history and I go, no wonder I had to do 35 years in the trenches with Sunday school. I get it now, right? To help unpack toxic religious supremacy. Religious supremacy is hurting us as much as anything else on this planet. That's that curse of certainty. So thank you. Suzanne, are you there? Do you want to add? Or Monique?
I don't know. I'm so grateful I took this time, Eddie. It was just an amazing. It just gives me so much hope. I just don't feel so alone in my part of the world.
No.
I just feel that anything is possible after listening to you and the wisdom you've brought to us today. Profound thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that reflection. There is so much to be hopeful for right now. When people are singing from their balconies in Italy, they are 4 to 6 weeks ahead of us on the viral curve, and they are showing us. They are showing us that we can get through this. So we're going to sing together, and we're going to dance together, and we're going to find ways to use technology to move it from the realm of FOMO, fear-based stuff, to Joji, joy of joining in. Monique, do you want to add to us, please? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry. I'm just it's a little loud in my house. So just gratitude for everything you shared. I really appreciated reading your post, and it's just nice to be around, just in a group, staying in groups where we kind of feel the same way and we see, the same vision, that it's really all about love. And as long as we can drop into our love space and continue sharing from the heart, I'm like, we're going to be okay. It's an exciting opportunity to make shifts and changes into whatever we want to imagine it to be. So let's just, focus on the love and imagine love and just feel that and spread that, even in the internet. Like I feel it from all of you, virtually. So much appreciation. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, much appreciation for you showing up too. So this is the time where we're going to learn to reconnect in new ways. Isn't it amazing? We're going to find conscious intimacy without physical intimacy.
Edie.
Yeah.
Edie, I from one of your Marco Polo videos, I remember watching that one day and writing down on little mini sticky notes and sticking them to the bottom of my monitor at work, because I work in a really unhealthy, large system. The 3.5% number.
Yeah.
And Joji. And so I see those every day. And I'm so glad that I was able to get past my own introversion. And I think as I get older, I'm a baby crone.
Yeah.
As I get older, I more and more find myself getting past being worried about making a complete ass of myself. And so I'm so grateful that that I found myself in the same room with you at the Marina Library and got past my fear of making an ass of myself and came and introduced myself to you. And if we are the ocean, then I want to thank you for being one of the rivers that is rushing us toward it.
Thank you. There's another song
Thank
that I just love, and it's I would love to live my life like a river, surprised at its unfolding. Right? To live in the surprise of this unfolding right now is ritualizing. It's sacred. That's not a word, but making sacred that which we're living in right now. So thank you for that. Thank you for being here today, for all your reflections. I'm going to put out this as a recording that you can share with your friends and family. Let's get more people involved in this conversation. This is worthy of our time to take advantage of this pattern interrupt to really show up in our light. So Thank you. Go to ofonebreath.org if you can chip in a few dollars to help. I appreciate it so much. And let's breathe together at the top of every hour. I love you all. Be well. May it be so. May it be love. Aho.
Aho.
Oh.
Love you, Edie.
Love you too, Vicki. Bye, Jenny Lou. Bye, Lauren. Bye, Monique.
Bye, Edie.
Bye, loves.